Hey everyone! Tonight we're kicking things off with the incredible survival skills of the Bedouins, those nomadic desert dwellers who thrived in places so brutally hot that even the sun seemed to take pity breaks. Before you settle in, hit that like button and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy my content. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always find it fascinating to see our global audience tuning in. Now dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for some ambient background noise, and let's ease into tonight's adventure together. If you've ever complained about your summer vacation being too hot, congratulations, you've clearly never met the Arabian desert. This isn't your typical beach chair sunburn kind of heat. We're talking melt your sandals while you're still wearing them temperatures. The kind of heat that makes the air itself feel personal. You don't simply walk in this heat, you negotiate with it. And the sand? Oh, it's not just hot, it's downright vindictive. It invades your shoes, contaminates your food, lodges in your ears, and somehow penetrates your very soul. But for the Bedouins, the nomadic Arab tribes who called this furnace home, this wasn't punishment, it was just another Tuesday. The Arabian desert, particularly the Rub al-Khali or Empty Quarter, ranks among Earth's most inhospitable places. Yet Bedouins raised families, herded animals, and casually drank tea in these conditions. Tea, in 45 degrees Celsius heat. Meanwhile, most of us turn into cranky toddlers if the AC breaks for more than 4 minutes. So how do they do it? No high-tech gear, no climate-controlled shelters, no cooling towels or smartwatches or overpriced water bottles named after mountains. What they had was generations of hard-won desert wisdom and an extraordinary tolerance for discomfort. To them, the desert wasn't an enemy to fight, more like a strict landlord with very specific rules. Respect it, follow the protocols, and it might let you live another day. Every aspect of Bedouin life was engineered for survival. Their breathable black goat hair tents, their meticulously timed daily routines. Nothing was wasted, no movement unnecessary. You'd never catch a Bedouin power walking at high noon to hit some arbitrary step goal. That's how you become a cautionary tale. Their secret weapon? Adaptation. Not the shiny app update kind, but the sun-baked, trial-by-fire variety forged through generations of learning what works and what gets you cooked like shish kebab. In the desert, shade isn't a luxury, it's life support. Not the, oh this is pleasant variety, but the thank you for not letting me die here kind. If you've never stood under a palm tree in 48 degrees Celsius heat, feeling your soul slowly reattach to your body, you've never truly understood gratitude. The Bedouins mastered the art of chasing, creating, and preserving shade like it was treasure, because it was. Forget beachfront property. In the Arabian desert, real estate value gets measured in square inches of shadow. Their first line of defense? The Beit al-Shayar, or House of Hair. Yes, exactly as literal as it sounds. These tents woven from goat hair performed climate control miracles, expanding when wet, rare but helpful during sudden rains, while staying breathable when dry. This was HVAC before HVAC, with far fewer complaints to the landlord. The tents were mobile, naturally. When your neighborhood suddenly becomes a hot plate, you move. But placement wasn't random. Bedouins positioned them with precision, wind direction, sun angles. Even the location of that lone tree 80 kilometers away all factored in. When tents weren't available, improvisation kicked in. Camels doubled as excellent shade providers. Large, stationary, when chewing cud, and conveniently tall. A Bedouin might rest in a camel's shadow, or in dire moments, dig a shallow trench and lie in it like a stylish sandworm. Even small rocks, dune shadows, or saddlebags became tools in the shade game. The Bedouins didn't wait for breezes. They built microclimates with whatever was at hand. Shade wasn't luck, it was strategy. Let's talk about goat hair, the unlikely miracle material that became both construction staple and survival technology. Not what you'd expect from animals that spend their lives eating anything not nailed down. To Bedouins, goat hair wasn't just fluff. It was technology spun into durable yarn that became their famous black tents. These weren't primitive shelters, but sophisticated survival tools. When dry, the The loosely woven goat hair allowed airflow, a godsend in paint-peeling heat. When rare rains came, the fibers would swell, tightening the weave to become waterproof. Automatic tint adjustment with zero paperwork. This dual-purpose fabric meant tents stayed cool and breezy by day, dry and insulated at night, when desert temperatures could plummet like a crashing stock market. The design was equally ingenious, low profile to resist winds, quickly assembled, often while simultaneously wrangling camels and preventing toddlers from becoming dune decorations. Inside, spaces were divided by gender and function, one side for men and guests, another for women and family life. Open sides allowed airflow, but cloth panels could drop instantly when sandstorms came knocking. Bedouins perfected comfort within extreme limits, like camping if your campground was actively trying to kill you. Not a palace, but in environments hostile to human existence, a goat hair tent was both fortress and sanctuary. Now to address the question every overheated tourist asks while rapidly turning into human jerky, why are they wearing all those clothes? Enter the Bedouin robe, known as dishdasha or galabia, depending on region. To outsiders, it looks like someone gave up on tailoring, but it's actually thermal regulation perfected. Light-colored, loose cotton or linen creates an insulating air layer between skin and scorching heat, like wearing your personal shade. Unlike tank tops that leave skin baking, these robes protect while allowing sweat to evaporate efficiently, nature's cooling system. Their headwear like the keffiyeh or shamak isn't fashion. It's portable shelter for head and face, shielding from sun, dust, and sandstorms while remaining breathable and adaptable. Even colors matter. White reflects sunlight while darker hues, more common in winter, absorb warmth. You won't find neon activewear here unless someone's trying to get spotted by satellites. If you think waking up early is tough, try doing it because the sun is actively plotting your demise. Bedouins weren't morning people by choice. They were morning people by survival necessity. In the desert, timing is everything. Heat doesn't gradually intensify. It sucker punches you around 9 a.m. and doesn't let up until sunset. So Bedouins mastered desert scheduling. Up before dawn to travel, resting during midday's inferno, resuming in cooler twilight. Modern tourists call this a siesta. Bedouins call it not dying horribly. They didn't march across dunes at noon to prove a point. That's how you end up hallucinating mirages trying to sell you bottled water. Instead, they'd set up camp, find shade, sip tea, yes, hot tea. We'll get to that. And let the sun exhaust itself while they waited it out. Even the camels knew the drill. No panicked galloping, no dramatic desert sprints, just calm, steady pacing like they were strolling to a mildly urgent appointment. There was no prize for speed in the desert, only for not collapsing face first into the sand. And when it came to navigation, Bedouins wrote the playbook. Traveling during cooler hours meant knowing exactly where you were going when every dune looked identical. No compasses needed here, just stars, shadows, and memories so sharp they could probably recite sand patterns by name. These desert dwellers could spot the subtle differences, which rocky valleys trapped heat like ovens, where the sand lay softest underfoot, which routes offered slow baking versus instant frying. They knew when to detour, when to climb, and when to simply say nope, not today, and wait it out under their trusty goat hair tents. To outsiders, their pace seemed leisurely, but in reality, it was survival choreography, every step calculated to conserve energy and hydration. Rushing meant sweating more, losing precious water faster, and flirting with heat stroke. Steady movement meant reaching the next well, village, or shady tree with enough energy left to actually enjoy being alive. This wasn't just walking, it was a masterclass in energy management, where the rhythm of footsteps matched the heartbeat of the desert itself. Now let's talk about the real MVP of desert survival, the camel. These grumpy-looking beasts didn't just endure the desert, they made it look easy. Think of them as the Swiss Army knives of survival. Transportation, shade, milk factories, early warning systems, and occasional attitude problems all wrapped in a fuzzy, knobby-kneed package. To the untrained eye, camels appear perpetually annoyed by existence itself. But to Bedouins, they were life partners, quite literally. A Bedouin without his camel was just some poor guy standing in a heat wave wondering why his feet hurt. Let's break down their superpowers. First, camels can go weeks without water, not as a party trick, but as an evolutionary masterpiece. Contrary to popular belief, their humps store fat, not water, and their bodies regulate sweat better than any fitness influencer. While you're melting like a popsicle, camels stroll by with that signature amateur expression. Their feet? Massive, padded snowshoes for sand that prevent sinking or sizzling. Their nostrils? They can close them during sandstorms. Take that, allergy season. And camel milk? Nutrient-rich, slightly salty, and perfectly drinkable without refrigeration. Nature's original protein shake. Bedouins didn't just use camels as pack animals. They were living GPS systems for finding water. When a camel suddenly perks up and veers left, you follow. No questions asked. But camel ownership wasn't all humps and cuddles. These creatures were more like temperamental business partners who might spit in your face, but could also save your life. Bedouins respected their camels, named them, talked to them, basically treated them better than most people treat their Wi-Fi routers. It was a relationship built on mutual survival in a land that spared no one. Now picture this. It's high noon in the desert. The sun hangs like an angry heat lamp from hell. Your sweat has started sweating. Every logical brain cell screams for ice water. And what do the Bedouins do? They brew some piping hot tea. Not as some ironic hipster joke. This was serious survival strategy, a thermodynamic plot twist that would baffle any air-conditioned Westerner. Here's the science. Hot liquids trigger your body's natural cooling system. You start sweating, and in the dry desert air, that sweat evaporates rapidly, cooling you more effectively than chugging ice water, which can actually cause cramps when dehydrated. Plus, tea provides measured hydration, sip by sip, no brain freeze, just efficient heat management with a side of dignity. It wasn't just any tea either. Sometimes salted for electrolytes, sometimes herbal infusions from desert plants like sage or chamomile. Not fancy boutique blends, but practical concoctions that settled stomachs and replaced minerals. Tea was more than hydration. It was ritual. The desert strips life down to essentials, and the tea circle became one of Bedouins' few luxuries, where hospitality, storytelling, and trade negotiations all happened over steaming cups. In a world where survival meant embracing discomfort, sipping scalding tea under a blazing sun wasn't madness. It was mastery. A quiet middle finger to the desert's fury, served with proper etiquette. Because in the end, the Bedouins understood something fundamental. You don't conquer the desert. You learn its rhythm, respect its rules, and occasionally share some really hot tea with it. Water in the desert wasn't just a drink. It was VIP currency, sacred commodity, and occasional cause of tribal conflicts. While modern folks think of water as something that magically appears in fridge dispensers, Bedouins treated it like medieval kings guarded gold, precious, measured, never wasted. Their survival with minimal water wasn't mystical. It was meticulous planning plus an unbreakable water respect code. First, they knew where to find it. In landscapes that looked like endless sand photocopies, Bedouins could spot subtle clues, specific plants, bird formations, terrain shapes that screamed water here, about 90% of the time. That 10% when they were wrong. Let's just say the camels gave serious side-eye. They engineered sophisticated water systems, deep wells tapping underground springs, even cloth traps to catch overnight condensation. Nothing was wasted. You didn't pour one out for the homies, unless you really meant it. Drinking was rationed carefully, especially during travel. Hydrate enough, not excessively. Overdrinking could backfire by flushing essential salts, hence that salty tea. Water also held deep social significance. Sharing water with travelers wasn't just nice, it was moral obligation. Denying water in the desert was basically slamming the door during a blizzard, potentially starting blood feuds. Even enemies were offered water before negotiations, dehydration being famously nonpartisan. Then there's the desert's signature tantrum, the sandstorm. Picture this. You're sipping tea by your tent, chatting with your camel, when suddenly the horizon vanishes. The sky turns sickly yellow-brown, and before you can say, "Who angered the weather gods?" you're getting violently exfoliated by wind. Welcome to sandstorm season, or as Bedouins probably called it, Tuesday. For most people, this would trigger panic about dust in every orifice syndrome. For Bedouins, just another survival puzzle to solve, preferably without losing livestock. Their playbook started with situational awareness. They could spot storms brewing long before arrival through subtle signs, strange light quality, wind shifts, that eerie quiet when the desert holds its breath. Then came tent lockdown. Those clever goat hair tents with open sides for airflow, instant sandproofing via weighted cloth panels that drop faster than cheap blinds. For those caught outdoors, the shamak became a makeshift hazmat suit, wrapped tightly across face and eyes. Some carried extra cloth specifically for emergency wrapping. In worst-case scenarios, dig a shallow trench, lie flat, and wait it out like a gritty desert ninja. The storm would pass eventually, followed by the universal ritual of checking camels and laughing about who got sand in the weirdest places. Spoiler, it's always the ears. To outsiders, sandstorms looked apocalyptic. To Bedouins, just another round of nature's dermatological abuse from the sky. But thanks to preparation, patience, and those multi-purpose scarves, they handled it like pros who knew the drill. Respect the desert's moods, and you might just live to drink tea another day. When your kitchen doubles as a solar cooker, food choices become less about gourmet flavors and more about not becoming roasted human jerky. The Bedouin diet wasn't designed for Instagram-worthy plating. It was engineered for survival. No 7-course meals here, no deep-fried delicacies, and definitely no midnight snack runs, unless you fancy gathering firewood when all the trees quit centuries ago. The Bedouin menu revolved around 3 non-negotiable principles: simplicity, sustainability, and staying alive. Let's start with the superstar, camel milk. This wasn't just a beverage, it was nature's ultimate survival smoothie. Packed with fats, proteins, vitamins, and hydration magic, camel milk was consumed fresh when possible or fermented into a yogurt-like drink called Laban. Not exactly a milkshake, but when you're facing 110 degrees Fahrenheit heat, it hit the spot better than any artisanal cold brew. Then there were dates, nature's original energy bars. These sweet little power pellets were lightweight, non-perishable, and packed with potassium and fiber. Bedouins often paired them with milk, creating what passed for desert dessert, sweet, filling, and miraculously sand-free most of the time. Flatbreads made appearances when possible, quickly cooked on hot stones or simple pans. No artisanal sourdough here, just functional carbs that could double as plates or emergency napkins when things got messy. Meat was a rare luxury, typically reserved for special occasions, honored guests, or when a goat committed some unforgivable offense. When served, it was cooked low and slow, sometimes in underground pits. Seasoning was minimal, mostly salt and gratitude. Spices were considered unnecessary when your main seasoning was "thank God we're eating." Water wasn't gulped recklessly during meals. Strategic sipping was the rule, usually after eating to avoid diluting precious stomach acids. Even the order of consumption was optimized. This wasn't dining. It was a carefully choreographed survival ritual. You'd think after roasting all day under the sun, the desert might cut you some slack at night. Think again. When the sun dipped below the horizon, temperatures didn't gently cool. They plummeted like a dropped water jug. Bedouins essentially lived between 2 extremes: human barbecue by day, meat locker by night. Forget memory foam mattresses or down comforters. Comfort was measured by how few insects you accidentally swallowed while snoring. During scorching months, they slept under the stars with maybe a blanket and a prayer. But don't imagine some romantic Instagram camping scene. This was more lie very still and hope the wind remembers to show up survival. The sweet spot was sleeping between sunset and dawn, catching that narrow window of bearable temperatures. The best beds? A soft sand patch with a saddlebag pillow and your trusty camel parked nearby for security, shade, and moral support. Nothing says sweet dreams like a grumpy ruminant chewing its cud in the dark. When midday heat became unbearable, naps weren't optional. They were physiological necessities. You didn't power through like some caffeine-fueled office drone. You surrendered to the heat like a proper desert dweller. In colder months, sleeping inside the goat hair tent became mandatory, bundled under thick blankets. The same tent that breathed during summer heat became a toasty cocoon, unless the wind decided to throw a tantrum and blast sand in your face all night. There were no strict bedtimes, just the understanding that sleep happened when possible, often in shifts. Someone had to watch the fire, guard the animals, and snore loudly enough to keep jackals at bay. No alarm clocks needed, just moonlight, instinct, and the occasional coughing fit from your cousin 3 tents over. Raising kids is challenging enough with modern conveniences. Now imagine doing it in an environment where toys are rocks, the playpen is a sand dune, and your toddler's first word might be camel. Bedouin children didn't get childhoods filled with plastic playsets and organic snacks. They got intensive survival training starting about 5 minutes after birth. From infancy, Bedouin kids were expected to adapt to the desert, not the other way around. Swaddled tightly in cloth, like adorable little human burritos, they were protected from sun, sand, and unwanted scorpion interactions. These wraps served dual purposes: temperature regulation and preventing tiny limbs from flailing in hot surfaces. Functional? Absolutely. Fashionable? Surprisingly, yes. But Bedouin parenting wasn't about helicoptering. No hovering adults here, just watchful camel observing ones. Children learned through observation and imitation, watching how water was handled like liquid gold, how clothing was adjusted for heat, and how to avoid fire pits, usually by only stepping in them once. By age 5 or 6, they were contributing to real tasks. Boys learned camel care and terrain navigation. Girls mastered tent making, cooking, and the delicate art of pouring tea without burning down the family circle. This wasn't just chores, it was early survival internship. Play still happened, of course. Kids raced, wrestled, told stories, and invented elaborate games involving sticks and confused goats. Their playground had no jungle gyms, just endless sand and the occasional sandstorm to keep things interesting. Discipline was firm but fair, survival demanded it, yet affection was never lacking. Bedouin families were tight-knit, with children raised communally by the entire camp. Think village-raised kids, minus the screen time. Through all this, children learned the ultimate lesson. The desert doesn't forgive, but it respects those who learn its rhythms. In most cultures, hospitality means offering coffee and pretending your house is always clean. In the desert, it means offering literal survival, even to strangers who might have insulted your cousin 3 trade routes ago. For Bedouins, hospitality wasn't optional. It was sacred law, older than most sand dunes. In an environment that could roast you alive before breakfast, turning someone away could be a death sentence. And nobody wanted that karma on their camels. Guests, whether invited, unexpected, or suspiciously vague about their origins, were always welcomed. First came shade, nature's AC, then seating on cushions, then water or tea, all before any questions were asked. You didn't interrogate someone while they were still sweating like a snowman in July. Next came food. Even if supplies were low, guests received dates, flatbread, and sometimes meat, though that was usually saved for VIPs like elders or that cousin who finally returned your borrowed camel after 3 months. Then the tea ceremony, slow, deliberate, filled with meaningful silences and the clinking of cups. This wasn't just refreshment, it was diplomatic theater. Hospitality extended beyond individuals. Entire tribes built reputations on generosity. A stingy host brought shame. A generous one gained honor and future favors. Even enemies received water and rest, with grudges politely shelved until at least the 3rd cup of tea. The code demanded it. After all, you can't feud if everyone's unconscious from heat stroke. To Bedouins, hospitality was mutual survival, a shared understanding that the desert didn't care who you were, but a kind host just might save your life. All it cost was some water, shade, and your best tea service. When the sun finally dipped below the dunes and the desert cooled from lava flow to merely toasty, it was storytelling time. But these weren't fairy tales with dragons and castles. These were gritty survival narratives featuring clever outwits, a goat, and maybe 3 dates. No screens, no subscriptions, just firelight, a circle of exhausted travelers, and that one uncle who definitely embellished the ending every time. Storytelling wasn't just entertainment, it was living memory. Bedouins didn't write things down, paper being somewhat scarce in sand dunes. So brains became libraries, storing desert lore, tribal genealogies, star maps, and jokes that had aged like fine camel cheese. Children learned history not from textbooks, but from grandmothers who could recite entire family trees backward while spinning yarn or sipping tea. They knew who betrayed whom 3 generations back, complete with dramatic pauses and just enough scandal to keep kids wide-eyed and suspicious of the neighbors. Each tribe had its anthology, tales of survival, loss, honor, revenge, and the occasional cursed well, all passed down through dramatic tellings and eyebrow gymnastics. With so much waiting for heat to pass, stars to rise, or that stubborn camel to move, stories became the original binge-watching. No one stared at glowing rectangles ignoring their family. They stared at each other, arguably more terrifying. Stories also preserved survival knowledge: where to find water, which plants to avoid, how to calm panicked animals, all wrapped in metaphor, rhyme, and cautionary tales about reckless uncles. The modern world operates under the charming delusion that nature must be conquered: build taller walls, stronger AC, thicker sunscreen. The Bedouins understood something far more elegant. You don't fight the desert. You learn its rhythm and walk beside it. For centuries, Bedouin life wasn't about opposition but adaptation. Instead of paving over sand, they surfed it like heat-wave warriors. Their tents moved with seasons, routines shifted with the sun, patience stretched farther than the horizon. They didn't wear black robes in heat to be rebellious. Airflow was the game. Their goats weren't random livestock but compact survival machines. Even jewelry served purposes, sometimes dowry, sometimes emergency currency. Nothing was just decoration. Everything had purpose. Bedouins didn't curse sandstorms, they read them. They didn't rush through days, they paced them. Mornings for movement, noon for stillness, evenings for tea and stories. This wasn't laziness, but climate literacy. Conflicts, when they arose, were handled with layers of honor and negotiation. Burning bridges makes terrible survival strategy. Their understanding came not from apps, but practice. Want to find water? Walk with elders. Need moonless night navigation? Watch star shifts. No shortcuts, just lived experience and respect. Today we build deserts into cities and call it victory. Bedouins would smile knowingly. You don't win against the desert. You earn your place in it, one careful step at a time. As winds carry scents of dust and distant tea, remember, true survival isn't about resisting nature's power, but knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to sip your tea before the sand joins you. The heat doesn't care about your ego, but it might respect your humility. She wasn't born into palaces or silk sheets. Around 1502 in what's now western Ukraine, a peasant girl named Alexandra Lisoska lived a simple Christian life, until Crimean Tatar raiders tore her from that world, dragging her through the Ottoman slave trade's brutal chain toward Istanbul's bustling markets. Her beauty caught traffickers' eyes, but her sharp mind would redefine an empire. Renamed Hurrem, the cheerful one, she entered Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent's harem, where thousands of concubines had come before. Yet this foreign slave somehow caught the ruler's eye permanently. Some say it was her rare laughter in top-copy palaces' shadowed corridors. Others credit her multilingual poetry and wit. Whatever the reason, Suleiman didn't just favor her. He fell deeply, breaking centuries of Ottoman tradition by legally marrying her, the first sultanic wedding in generations. But Hurrem wasn't content being a trophy wife. Her rise became a masterclass in strategic ambition, from slave to consort to wife. That was just her opening move. In the Ottoman harem's cutthroat politics, beauty faded fast. Most concubines disappeared after bearing sons, shipped off to provincial palaces. Hurrem shattered this system, bearing multiple children and remaining at court. Unprecedented power for a harem woman. Soon she became Haseki Sultan, chief consort, wielding influence no Ottoman woman had held. The harem became her command center. Whispers spread. Was she manipulating the Sultan? Ambassadors' letters began calling her a shadow ruler. She corresponded with foreign monarchs like Poland's king, acting as diplomat. Meanwhile, she strategically positioned her sons for succession while neutralizing rivals. Her eldest, Mehmed, showed promise. Daughter Marima became her closest ally, later marrying powerful Grand Vizier Rustam Pasha. But their main obstacle? Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's eldest son from previous consort Mahidevran, beloved by the military and public. The rivalry turned vicious. Records indicate Mahidevran once beat Hurrem so severely she appeared before Suleiman bruised. The move backfired. Mahidevran was banished while Hurrem's star rose. By the 1550s, the succession crisis boiled over. Through her son-in-law Rustam, now Grand Vizier, Hurrem allegedly orchestrated Mustafa's downfall. Whispers reached Suleiman that Mustafa plotted rebellion. During the Persian campaign of 1553, Suleiman summoned his son. When Mustafa entered his father's tent in full ceremonial respect, guards seized and strangled him with a silk cord as Suleiman watched behind a curtain. The empire erupted. The military adored Mustafa. The public mourned. Foreign courts gasped. Whether Hurrem engineered this or merely benefited, her victory was complete. Mahidevran faded into obscurity while Hurrem's sons, particularly Selim, became the only viable heirs. Yet not all her children thrived. Youngest son Sahanger, deformed and delicate, reportedly died of grief after Mustafa's execution. Hurrem's influence kept growing. She broke protocol by moving from the harem to palace administrative quarters. She commissioned mosques, schools, and hospitals across the empire, crafting a legacy as philanthropist, not just schemer. When she died in 1558, years before Suleiman, she was buried beside his future tomb at the Suleimani Mosque, another unprecedented honor for a concubine-turned-empress. Her daughter Marima and grandson Murad III would continue her legacy, cementing the Sultanate of Women, era where imperial women shaped politics from behind veils. European ambassadors called Hurrem the Russian witch, but her intelligence and resilience had rewritten Ottoman history. The slave girl became an architect of empire, proving power wears many disguises, sometimes a silk veil, sometimes a knowing smile behind palace lattices. In Byzantium, marriage began not with romance, but contracts. The Ingesis betrothal ceremony was more business merger than love match. Families negotiated terms while the actual bride and groom, often teenagers, had little say. Dowries, property rights, family obligations were sealed before witnesses. Breaking this pact risked lawsuits and scandal. Virginity was non-negotiable, with chastity proofs sometimes required. Gifts exchanged during Ingesis, rings, robes, livestock, symbolized the coming union, but the real wedding, gamos, might wait months. This wasn't ceremony. It was strategic alliance building where daughters were bargaining chips in familial power plays. The dowry, prau, determined a Byzantine bride's worth and protection. Aristocrats traded estates and slaves. Middle-class families offered furnishings and cash. This marital insurance policy theoretically safeguarded wives if abandoned or widowed, unless powerful men contested it. Wealthy families wielded dowries as weapons, marrying daughters to generals for military backing or officials for political access. Daughters were assets deployed strategically, some to marry, others to convents, lucky few to catch the emperor's eye. Multiple daughters could bankrupt families, forcing estate divisions or cloistering excess girls. The dowry wasn't just money. It walked publicly with the bride, advertising family wealth like a living billboard. Byzantine weddings were theatrical productions blending Roman pomp and Christian ritual. Elite ceremonies spanned days. Brides underwent ritual baths before being draped in silks and veils, modesty required, but display essential. Processions through streets showcased the family's status, with musicians and weeping relatives, real or performative. The Gamos ceremony featured crowning with golden wreaths symbolizing marital martyrdom, happy thought, circling the altar 3 times, and shared communion. Candles, psalms, and solemn vows transformed 2 individuals into a social unit. Then came the awkwardly public bedding ceremony, sometimes with attendants verifying consummation via bloodstained sheets, especially among elites needing legitimate heirs. Post-wedding feasts were power displays. Seating charts mapped political favor. Multi-course meals featured spiced lamb and honeyed wines. Entertainment ranged from acrobats to poets extolling the groom's virility, no pressure. The wedding cake, sweet bread symbolizing fertility, had to be eaten together lest gossip ignite. For the bride, marriage began a complex new existence. As Kyria, mistress of the house, she navigated mother-in-law politics while producing heirs. Sons brought status, barrenness risked repudiation. Yet clever women found influence through household management, church patronage, and social networks, especially when husbands governed distant provinces. Byzantine marriage was ultimately political theater. Emperors married daughters to foreign princes for peace. Generals wed imperial kin for legitimacy. Even Constantine VII's marriage to usurper Romanos Lecapino's daughter Helena smoothed a regime change. Merchant families merged trade networks through marriages. Tax officials connected with governors via strategic unions. Women became bridges between rival families or diplomatic tools, like Anna Porphyrogenita, married to Vladimir the Great to Christianize Kievan Rus. A bad match could spark rebellions. A good one might stabilize empires. The marriage crown wasn't just ornament. It was a diplomatic instrument worn with purpose. Some Byzantine marriages collapsed spectacularly. Emperor Justinian II divorced noble Eudokia to marry Khazar Princess Theodora for political gain, outraging the aristocracy and church. Adultery accusations, hard to prove against men, ruined noble women, while fraudulent marriages dragged through ecclesiastical courts for years. Quieter tragedies unfolded too. Child brides dying in childbirth, May-December marriages of convenience, political unions leaving both miserable. Even wedding omens carried weight. Spilt wine, dropped crowns, or guttering candles might foreshadow doom in this superstitious society. The Byzantine wedding legacy endures in Eastern Orthodox ceremonies today. The crowns, ceremonial walks, and chants all echo Constantinople's traditions. More profoundly, they established marriage as communal covenant, not private affair. Byzantine noblewomen like Theodora, Irene, and Zoe proved marriage could be power springboard, from bride to ruler, with the right strategy. Ultimately, Byzantine marriage wove together personal, political, and spiritual threads, sometimes beautifully, often painfully. Behind the veils and liturgies, it remained what it had always been, society's foundation stone, for better or worse. The desert doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It simply exists, vast, indifferent, and brutally efficient at exposing human frailty. Yet within this merciless expanse, the Bedouins didn't just survive. They thrived, turning hardship into an art form. Their resilience wasn't accidental. It was cultivated through generations of trial, error, and hard-won wisdom. Take their clothing, for instance. To the uninitiated, the Bedouin robe, the dishdasha or thobe, might seem like an impractical choice for scorching heat. But every fold, every stitch was deliberate. The loose, flowing fabric created a microclimate, trapping cool air against the skin while allowing sweat to evaporate efficiently. The headscarf, keffiyeh or shamak, wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a multi-tool, shielding against sun, sandstorms, and even doubling as a makeshift water filter in emergencies. And then there was the matter of footwear. Modern hiking boots would have disintegrated within days under the desert's relentless abuse. Bedouins wore simple sandals, light, breathable, and easily repaired. When the sand grew too hot, They wrapped their feet in cloth or walked at dawn and dusk, timing their movements like chess players anticipating the desert's next move. But survival wasn't just about what they wore, it was about how they moved. The Bedouin stride was a study in efficiency, unhurried, measured, conserving energy with every step. No wasted motion, no unnecessary exertion. They navigated the dunes with the precision of sailors reading ocean currents, their footsteps tracing invisible paths known only to those raised in the sand's embrace. Water, of course, was the ultimate currency. The Bedouins didn't just drink, they strategized. Small, frequent sips maintained hydration without overtaxing the kidneys. They avoided alcohol, a quick route to dehydration, and salty foods, which increased thirst. Even their diet was optimized for water retention. Dates, camel milk, and lean meats provided nutrients without demanding excess fluids for digestion. And when water sources ran dry, they improvised. Dew collectors made from woven grass. Hidden wells marked by subtle rock formations. Even the occasional cannet, an ancient underground irrigation system that channeled water from distant mountains. The desert might have been stingy, but the Bedouins were masterful at coaxing every last drop from its grasp. But perhaps their greatest weapon was patience. The desert rewarded those who waited, for cooler hours, for passing storms, for the right moment to strike out toward the next oasis. Western explorers often perished because they rushed, burning through supplies and stamina in a futile race against the sun. The Bedouins understood that survival wasn't a sprint. It was a marathon where the finish line shifted with the sands. Their nights were no less calculated. While the day's heat faded, the cold crept in with equal vengeance. Bedouins slept in layers, their tents designed to retain warmth without suffocating them. The same robes that shielded them from the sun now doubled as blankets, their bodies acclimated to temperature swings that would leave outsiders shivering or sweating by turns. And through it all, they maintained an unshakable sense of community. The desert was too vast, too cruel, to face alone. Families traveled together, shared resources, and upheld a code of hospitality that bordered on sacred. A stranger at your fire was not just a guest. He was a temporary ally in the endless struggle against the elements. This was the Bedouin way, a life stripped down to its essentials, where every action had purpose, every tradition was rooted in survival, and every hardship was met with quiet, stubborn defiance. They didn't conquer the desert. They didn't need to. They mastered it, one deliberate step at a time. The Persian garden wasn't merely a collection of plants. It was a mathematical equation where nature balanced perfectly with human intention. These walled paradises, the origin of our word paradise, transformed barren landscapes into living geometry, proving civilization could bloom even in the harshest environments. At the heart of every classic Persian garden lay the Chahar Bagh, the four gardens layout dividing space into quadrants with intersecting waterways. This wasn't just pretty landscaping, it was cosmic cartography. The four channels mirrored ancient Zoroastrian beliefs about paradise's rivers of water, milk, wine, and honey, later adopted into Islamic tradition. Walking these paths became a spiritual journey, from the outer chaos of the world toward the garden's serene center. Water didn't just flow here, it performed. Persian engineers mastered the Kanat system, underground aqueducts that siphoned mountain spring water across miles of desert without losing a drop to evaporation. When this liquid treasure reached the garden, it danced through narrow stone channels called jui, creating cooling mists and soft, bubbling melodies. Pools positioned to reflect the sky transformed into mirrors of infinity, blending earth and heaven in shimmering illusion. Every plant served multiple purposes. Cypress trees symbolized eternity while providing shade. Pomegranates offered fruit and spiritual meaning. Roses delighted the senses, but also distilled into precious perfumes. The gardens engaged all five senses simultaneously. The citrus perfume of orange blossoms, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the flash of turquoise tiles against green foliage, the cool silk of rose petals between fingers, the the metallic tang of well water on the tongue. These weren't just pleasant spaces, they were political statements. When Cyrus the Great built Pasargada's gardens in the 6th century BCE, he wasn't just gardening. He demonstrated his empire's ability to tame nature itself. Subsequent Persian rulers used gardens as diplomatic tools. The more elaborate the garden, the more powerful the patron. A Shah's garden with rare imported plants and complex water features shouted technological and economic dominance without saying a word. The gardens also encoded philosophical ideas. Their strict geometry reflected Persian ideals of order and balance, while the constant water movement symbolized life's impermanence. Fruit trees demonstrated how patience yields sweetness, and the enclosing walls made clear that true paradise requires boundaries. Even the planting cycles carried meaning. Spring bulbs bursting through snow became metaphors for resurrection. Mughal emperors later adapted Persian garden principles to India's climate, creating wonders like the Taj Mahal's gardens. The flowing water channels and symmetrical plantings directly referenced Persian ancestors, though with local touches like mango trees and lotus ponds. Similarly, Spain's Alhambra Palace gardens blended Persian ideas with Moorish flair, proving the design's incredible adaptability. Modern landscape architects still study these gardens for their sustainable brilliance. The Cannet system inspired contemporary water conservation techniques, while the microclimate management, using trees for shade and water for evaporative cooling, informs today's urban planning. Even the psychological effects, how structured nature reduces stress, finds validation in current biophilic design research. Yet perhaps the greatest legacy lives in ordinary backyards. The Persian love of combining beauty with function, of creating private sanctuaries, of using water as both decoration and necessity. These principles still shape how we design outdoor spaces today. Every time someone builds a small fountain or plants a tree for shade, they're unconsciously channeling those ancient Persian gardeners who first proved humans could collaborate with nature to create something transcendent. The gardens also birthed an entire artistic tradition. Persian miniature paintings often depicted lush garden scenes, their intricate patterns mirroring actual garden designs. Poetry overflowed with garden metaphors. Rumi compared divine love to water-nourishing plants, while Hafez wrote of his soul as a nightingale singing in paradise's rose garden. Even carpet weavers translated garden layouts into wool and silk, allowing nomads to carry paradise with them. Today, restored Persian gardens like Kashan's Fin Garden still demonstrate this timeless harmony. Visitors walking its shaded paths experience the same sensory symphony ancient nobility enjoyed. The shock of coolness after desert heat, the hypnotic play of light through jasmine vines, the sudden understanding that these spaces weren't just beautiful, but deeply intelligent. They represent one of humanity's most profound insights, that civilization at its best doesn't conquer nature, but enters into sacred collaboration with it. The desert night falls like a velvet curtain, revealing a celestial spectacle unseen in light-polluted cities. For the Bedouins, this wasn't just scenery. It was their oldest map, clock, and storybook rolled into one. They navigated by stars with such precision that modern GPS would blush, recognizing constellations not as distant balls of gas, but as ancestral guides whispering directions across generations. Their star lore ran deep. The group of stars Arabs called Alpha Rhea, Pleiades, signaled the start of safe travel season when its heliacal rising coincided with cooler weather. Orion's belt, Algebar, helped calculate lunar months for their complex desert calendar. Even the Milky Way had practical uses. Its hazy band served as a cosmic compass when other stars played hide-and-seek behind sandstorms. But stellar navigation was just the beginning. Bedouins read the desert itself like a living text. They noticed how certain plants grew straighter on north-facing slopes, where moisture lingered longer. They tracked the subtle ways wind sculpted dunes, the gentle slip face indicating prevailing wind direction, the sharper windward side revealing where storms might brew. A trained eye could spot these patterns from miles away, long before modern weather apps existed. Their timekeeping methods were equally ingenious. Shadow sticks planted vertically became sundials, with the length and angle of shadows marking hours more accurately than any wristwatch. They divided daylight into 8 watches corresponding to natural rhythms. The cool dawn hour for travel, Al-Ghada; the brutal midday heat for rest, Al-Hijra; the golden twilight for storytelling, Al-Asr. The desert also provided unexpected weather forecasts. A sudden spike in scorpion activity meant rain was coming. The sensitive creatures detected humidity changes before humans could. Certain birds flying low signaled approaching storms, while the evening appearance of desert foxes suggested clear skies ahead. Even rock formations served as natural barometers. Specific stones would sweat when humidity rose. Their survival tricks bordered on magical realism. Need water? They'd dig where desert ants congregated. The insects always nest near underground moisture. Lost, they'd release a female camel. Her unerring homing instinct would lead to the nearest oasis. Sandstorm coming? They'd wet their headscarves and breathe through the damp cloth, creating an improvised air filtration system. The Bedouin relationship with camels went far beyond transportation. These ships of the desert were living survival kits. Their milk stayed fresh for days in scorching heat, a complete nutritional package with water, protein, and fat. Camel urine, strained through sand, treated wounds, while their hair made ropes and their dung fueled fires. Even their size helped predict temperature shifts. When camels started grumbling en masse, a cold night was coming. Their medical knowledge put many modern first aid kits to shame. They treated dehydration with a precise saltwater ratio that modern force solutions later replicated. For snake bites, they'd apply tight tourniquets and suck out venom long before Western medicine discovered this technique. Sunstroke victims were buried up to their necks in cool sand, while being fed tiny sips of water mixed with mint, a primitive but effective ICU. Perhaps most impressive was their psychological resilience. They transformed hardship into humor. Sand in your food became desert seasoning. Blistering heat, Allah's sauna. Children played games identifying cloud shapes that never brought rain, turning disappointment into art. Elders spoke of hard times as Allah's tests that strengthened character, reframing suffering as spiritual weightlifting. This wisdom wasn't static. It evolved through generations of careful observation. Young Bedouins learned through dune algebra, calculating slopes and distances with an accuracy that baffled European explorers. Their navigation techniques later influenced early Arab astronomers, who combined this practical knowledge with mathematical precision to advance celestial science. The desert didn't just tolerate these ingenious people, it shaped them. Lean bodies adapted to conserve water, with kidneys that concentrated urine more efficiently than average. Skin developed darker pigmentation, not just for sun protection, but for better folate conservation. Even their blood adapted. Bedouins typically have higher red blood cell counts, allowing them to extract maximum oxygen from thin desert air. Yet for all their toughness, Bedouins maintained profound respect for the desert's power. Their proverbs warned against arrogance. The desert allows you to think you've mastered it, just before it buries you. They understood that survival wasn't about conquering nature, but about moving with its rhythms like a perfect dance partner who sometimes steps on your toes. Modern survival experts still study Bedouin techniques. NASA has consulted their water conservation methods for Mars mission planning. Special Forces units incorporate their navigation tricks into desert warfare training. Even urban preppers could learn from their waste not mentality. Every date pit saved for fuel, every drop of morning dew collected, every scrap of leather repurposed. In our era of climate change, the Bedouins' deep adaptation strategies take on new urgency. Their ability to thrive in extremes offers clues for our overheating planet. Perhaps the ultimate lesson isn't just their technical skills, but their mindset, that scarcity breeds creativity, that observation trumps assumption, and that the harshest environments can cultivate the most resilient cultures. The Persian Garden's influence stretched far beyond its walled boundaries. seeding ideas that would blossom across continents and centuries. Like a hardy desert plant sending roots deep into arid soil, its design principles quietly infiltrated civilizations from Moorish Spain to Mughal India, adapting to local climates while preserving its essential philosophy that nature and humanity could coexist in perfect harmony. When Islamic armies conquered Spain in the 8th century, they brought Persian garden concepts to Europe's doorstep. The Alhambra's general-life gardens became living textbooks of this fusion, their rectangular pools reflecting Granada sky while cooling the air, their myrtle hedges trimmed into geometric perfection. Here, Persian water channels met Roman aqueduct technology, creating microclimates where pomegranates from Persia grew alongside native Spanish citrus. The famous Court of the Lions wasn't just beautiful. Its 4 water channels radiating from a central fountain directly referenced the Persian Chahar Bagh's cosmic symbolism. Meanwhile, in 16th century India, Babur, a descendant of Timur and Genghis Khan, literally carved Persian paradise into the subcontinent's rugged terrain. Homesick for Samarkand's gardens, the first Mughal emperor ordered terraced gardens built into Himalayan foothills, their cascading water channels mimicking mountain streams. His successors perfected this fusion. Humayun's Tombs garden introduced the Persian 8 paradise, harshest, layout to funerary architecture, while Shah Jahan's Taj Mahal elevated garden symbolism to its zenith. The Taj's reflecting pool didn't just mirror the mausoleum. It doubled the Chahar Bagh's celestial metaphor, creating an earthly paradise where architecture and nature performed an eternal duet. The transmission wasn't always through conquest. Venetian merchants visiting Persia returned with sketches of paradise gardens, inspiring Renaissance Italy's Giardini Segreti, secret gardens. These walled enclaves behind palazzos featured Persian-inspired geometric herb beds and central fountains, though substituting cypresses for European boxwoods. Louis XIV gardeners at Versailles adapted Persian water features, though the Sun King's ego transformed subtle symbolism into overwhelming grandeur. Where Persian gardens whispered, Versailles shouted. Even the New World received Persian garden DNA. Spanish missionaries built Moorish Persian-inspired courtyard gardens in Mexican monasteries, their quadrants planted with medicinal herbs from both continents. Thomas Jefferson's Monticello gardens borrowed the Persian concept of the garden as a living laboratory, though replacing pomegranates with Virginia peaches. The Boston Public Gardens' 19th century design unconsciously echoed Persian sensibilities. Its winding paths and ornamental ponds offered urbanites the same respite from chaos that Persian gardens gave desert-weary travelers. The Industrial Revolution might have killed these traditions, but the arts and crafts movement resurrected them. British designer Gertrude Jekyll's herbaceous borders owed their color sequencing to Persian carpet garden motifs. Frederick Law Olmsted's Emerald Necklace Park system in Boston used Persian hydrological principles to manage urban runoff, proving ancient wisdom could solve modern problems. Today's sustainable designers still mine Persian garden ideas. Singapore's Gardens by the Bay employs ancient canot-like systems to cool its futuristic biomes. Dubai's Miracle Garden, a floral fantasy in the desert, uses buried clay pot irrigation straight from Persian agricultural manuals. Even vertical gardens in Manhattan high-rises apply the Persian concept of microclimate creation through strategic plant placement. But the most profound legacy lives in everyday spaces. The suburban backyard with its central lawn, modern proxy for Persian water features, and perimeter plantings unconsciously mimics Chahar Bagh layouts. Community gardens from Berlin to Buenos Aires continue the Persian tradition of social horticulture, where people gather not just to grow food, but to cultivate connection. Botanical gardens worldwide serve as direct descendants, their taxonomic beds arranged with Persian-like precision, though classifying plants by species rather than symbolic meaning. The New York Botanical Gardens' Persian-style anatomy garden even includes a modern interpretation of a canot, its recirculating water paying homage to ancient engineering. Perhaps most remarkably, Persian garden concepts now inform urban planning. Barcelona's superblocks model applies garden quadrant principles to city streets, creating pedestrian oases in asphalt deserts. Copenhagen's climate-resilient parks use Persian water channel techniques to manage storm surges, proving that what worked for desert water conservation also works against sea level rise. The Persian garden's true genius lay in its scalability. From emperor's paradise to peasant's vegetable patch, the core philosophy adapted. This flexibility explains its endurance. In our age of climate crisis, its lessons feel newly urgent. How to design with, not against, local climates. How to maximize minimal water. How to create beauty that serves ecological function. From the Alhambra's courtyards to Brooklyn's community gardens, the Persian garden lives on wherever people shape nature with reverence and intelligence. Its walls may have crumbled, but its ideas keep blooming, a testament to humanity's eternal longing to carve order from chaos, to make peace with our environment, to build paradise not in some distant afterlife, but here, now, with these hands and this water and this unforgiving yet generous earth. The desert night transforms into a celestial theater where Bedouin wisdom shines brightest. Unlike city dwellers who barely glance at the sky, these nomads developed an intimate relationship with the cosmos that guided their survival. Every star, constellation, and planet held practical significance beyond Western astrology's vague predictions. Their stellar navigation system operated with military precision. The group of stars Westerners call Pleiades, Alpha-Rhea in Arabic, didn't just represent mythical hunters. Its heliacal rising marked the safe travel season's commencement. When this star cluster appeared just before dawn in late spring, Bedouins knew the brutal summer heat would soon break. Orion's belt, Aljabar, served as their lunar calendar. Its position relative to the moon dictated when to move herds to seasonal grazing grounds. Even the Milky Way's hazy band became a reliable compass when sandstorms obscured other markers. But celestial knowledge extended beyond navigation. Certain star patterns predicted weather shifts. When the donkey's saddle, asterism appeared blurred, rain was imminent. The two wolves' stars are Gemini. Changing colors signaled approaching dust storms. This wasn't primitive superstition, but precise meteorology refined through generations of desert living. Their timekeeping methods put modern smartwatches to shame. A simple shadow stick planted vertically became an accurate sundial, its moving shadow dividing daylight into 8 practical watches. Al-Ghada marked the cool dawn hours for travel. Al-Hajara designated midday's lethal heat for rest. Al-Asr meant storytelling during golden twilight. This biological rhythm clock optimized productivity while minimizing heat exposure. The desert itself became a living textbook. Bedouins noticed how certain plants grew straighter on north-facing slopes where moisture lingered. They tracked wind-sculpted dune patterns, the gentle slip face indicating prevailing wind direction, the sharper windward side revealing approaching storms. These subtle environmental cues allowed navigation without instruments across featureless terrain. Their animal behavior observations bordered on clairvoyance. A sudden spike in scorpion activity meant impending rain. The creatures detected humidity, changes invisible to humans. Desert foxes emerging at dusk predicted clear nights ahead, while certain birds flying low signaled storms within hours. Even rock formations served as natural hygrometers. Specific stones would sweat when humidity rose before rainfall. Survival tricks defied conventional logic. Need water? Follow desert ants to their nests. The insects always colonize near underground moisture. Lost. Release a female camel. Her uncanny homing instinct leads straight to the nearest oasis. Sandstorm coming? Wet your shamak and breathe through the damp cloth, an improvised air filtration system centuries before N95 masks. The Bedouin-camel relationship surpassed mere utility. These ships of the desert were living survival kits. Their milk remained drinkable for days in extreme heat, a complete nutritional package with water, proteins, and fats. Camel urine, filtered through sand, disinfected wounds. Their hair wove into ropes, Even their dung fueled cooking fires. The animals' behavioral changes predicted weather shifts. When camels clustered together and grumbled, a cold snap was coming. Their medical knowledge rivaled modern emergency medicine. They treated dehydration with precise saltwater ratios that mirror today's for solutions. For snake bites, they applied tourniquets and extracted venom orally, a technique Western medicine later discovered. Sunstroke victims were buried in cool sand up to their necks while receiving mint-infused water sips, essentially creating a primitive ICU in the dunes. Psychological resilience became an art form. They reframed hardships with dark humor. Sand and food became desert seasoning. Blistering heat, Allah's sauna. Children played games identifying rainless cloud shapes, transforming disappointment into creativity. Elders spoke of droughts as Allah's tests that strengthened character, viewing suffering as spiritual weight training rather than victimhood. This wisdom wasn't static but evolved through meticulous observation. Young Bedouins learned dune algebra, calculating slopes and distances with an accuracy that baffled European explorers. Their navigation techniques later influenced Arab astronomers who merged this empirical knowledge with mathematics, advancing celestial science centuries ahead of Europe. Physiological adaptations complemented cultural ones. Bedouin bodies developed water-conserving kidneys that concentrated urine more efficiently than average. Darker skin pigmentation protected against UV rays while preserving folate levels. Higher red blood cell counts allowed extracting maximum oxygen from thin desert air, essentially evolving natural altitude acclimatization. Yet for all their toughness, Bedouins maintained profound respect for the desert's power. Their proverbs warned against arrogance. The desert lets you think you've mastered it, just before burying you. They understood true survival meant moving with nature's rhythms like perfect dance partners, sometimes leading, sometimes following, always attentive. Modern militaries and space agencies now study these techniques. NASA consulted Bedouin water conservation methods for Mars mission planning. Special Forces units incorporate their navigation tricks into desert warfare training. Even urban survivalists emulate their waste-not mentality. Every date pit saved for fuel, every drop of morning dew collected, every scrap of leather repurposed. In our climate crisis era, Bedouin adaptation strategies gain new urgency. Their ability to thrive in extremes offers solutions for our overheating world. But beyond practical skills, their greatest lesson is philosophical, that scarcity breeds innovation, observation trumps assumption, and the harshest environments can cultivate humanity's most resilient cultures. The desert didn't just shape Bedouins. It revealed what humans can become when we listen closely to the Earth's wisdom. The Persian Garden's legacy culminates in its most unexpected modern incarnation, not as historical relic, but as living blueprint for humanity's future. These ancient oases now inform everything from Mars colony designs to urban climate resilience, proving that 3,000-year-old wisdom still holds solutions for our planet's most pressing challenges. Contemporary architects have decoded the Persian Garden's DNA into 4 revolutionary principles, now transforming global design. First, the microclimate matrix, using water features and strategic planting to create localized weather systems. Dubai's sustainable city employs this through wind towers and mist-generating plants that cool streets naturally, cutting energy use by 45%. Second, hydrological hierarchy. The Persian Canat system reimagined as Singapore's ABC, Active Beautiful Clean, Waters program, where storm channels double as scenic canals lined with purification plants. The third principle, symbolic functionality, manifests in projects like Barcelona's superblocks. Just as Persian gardens use geometry to reflect cosmic order, these pedestrianized neighborhoods arrange green spaces in patterns that reduce urban heat while encouraging community interaction. The fourth principle, adaptive permanence, appears in New York's Hunters Point South Park. Its flood-resistant landscape mimics Persian gardens' ability to flourish in harsh environments while maintaining aesthetic harmony. Space agencies have taken particular interest. ESA's Melissa program, inspired by closed-loop Persian garden ecosystems, develops life support systems for Mars bases using algae bioreactors and water recycling. NASA's HIC's Habitat in Hawaii tests Persian-derived passive cooling techniques for lunar settlements, where energy-efficient temperature control could mean life or death. Urban planners now apply Persian garden logic to combat climate change. Rotterdam's water squares store rainfall in ornamental basins during dry periods, transforming into public fountains, a direct descendant of Persian gardens' dual-purpose water features. Phoenix's Shade Equity initiative plants drought-resistant trees along transit routes using Persian canopy strategies to create 15 degrees Fahrenheit cooler corridors for pedestrians. Even healthcare architecture embraces these ideas. The Maggie's cancer care centers across Europe feature healing gardens with Persian-inspired quadrants, where patients walking geometric paths show 23% faster recovery rates than those in sterile corridors. Psychologists attribute this to the Persian garden effect, structured nature providing both stimulation and restorative calm. The tech world has also paid homage. Silicon Valley campuses increasingly incorporate Persian tech gardens, outdoor workspaces with Wi-Fi-enabled shaded alcoves and water features that boost programmer productivity by 18%. Google's Mountain View headquarters now includes a Chahar Bagh-inspired courtyard where engineers report breakthrough ideas often come during strolls along its cruciform waterways. Perhaps most revolutionary is how Persian garden principles inform vertical farming. Berlin's in-farm uses stacked growing modules arranged in geometric patterns that maximize light exposure, essentially modern interpretation of Persian terrace gardens. Their hydroponic systems recycle water with Canut-like efficiency, using 95% less water than traditional agriculture while yielding 30 harvests annually. Educational institutions worldwide now teach Persian garden thinking as a problem-solving framework. MIT's Department of Urban Studies runs a design lab exploring how ancient Persian water conservation techniques could solve California's droughts. Students have developed smartphone apps that overlay Persian garden layouts onto city maps, identifying optimal locations for green infrastructure. The Persian garden's ultimate lesson may be its philosophical approach to scarcity. In an age of climate crisis and resource depletion, its core tenets, doing more with less, finding abundance in limitation, seeing constraints as creative opportunities, feel urgently relevant. Architects like Bahrain's Mohammed Makaya have demonstrated how Persian-inspired courtyards and skyscrapers can reduce building energy use by 40%, while urban farms modeled on Persian gardens now supply 15% of Amman's fresh produce using 1/10 the water of conventional farms. As temperatures rise globally, the Persian garden's legacy continues evolving. From the solar-powered smart gardens of Abu Dhabi that adjust shading automatically, to Barcelona's schoolyards transformed into climate-resilient play spaces, the ancient model proves endlessly adaptable. Its greatest gift may be demonstrating that sustainability needn't mean austerity, that ecological design can be as sensually rich as it is technologically sophisticated. The Persian garden began as earthly paradise, became imperial propaganda, then artistic muse. Now it's something even more powerful, a roadmap for human survival. Its walls may have crumbled across centuries, but its ideas stand stronger than ever, reminding us that the deepest solutions often grow from the oldest roots. In the end, the Persian garden's true masterpiece wasn't any single landscape, but the timeless idea it planted, that humanity's highest calling isn't dominating nature, but dancing with it in perfect, life-sustaining rhythm.